mechatech, cutting to a specific measure, all these types of elements of building. So this one, though, chapter 16 really is a pair, ma'avir and mechabeh, ma'avir. That's I want to. So it won't confuse you. Later on, we're going to confuse you. But yes, question.
I want to ask. Today we study about making the
Yes, tent. Yes.
the umbrella, the umbrella.
Yeah.
But I mean, this Shabbat is raining heavily. I want to go to synagogue. Then I use the umbrella. It's for the sake of mitzvah also, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good question. That's why it really bothered my father-in-law. I told you, this isn't. Well, it's for the sake of a mitzvah. The rabbis, the custom is that we don't do that. It's forbidden. It could be, I think, more connected to the Eruv, but also connected to the way the original umbrellas were made, that they really were involved much more in like a type of do-it-yourself construction. Now the umbrellas today are pretty much pre-made, and you just sort of push a button and the whole thing opens up. It's a question of custom. In the end of the day, it's a custom. You get wet.
There's a lot of like coats, waterproof.
There's you can get a raincoat. Buy yourself a raincoat.
But sometimes it's really heavy.
Yeah, it's a shame, but this is the custom that we don't use umbrellas. Listen, if there is an eruv and you say I'm not going to go to shul otherwise, maybe you should, but you'd feel very odd at being the only one with an umbrella. Everybody else is not using one.
Other people might think that this person is transgressing Shabbat.
That's right. Thank you, sir.
Some mistake there.
Oh, okay. Hopefully it'll settle. Thank you. All right. Okay. It happens. It's we'll let it settle. Hope for the best. So, anyways, Ma'avir, and let me just say that we're now saying Ma'avir. That's the Hebrew is Ma'avir. And Be'era. What's a Be'era? Liv'or. Ma'avir. It's to burn. It's a flame. So Be'era is a flame. So Mav. That's why they put this in there. You see that? You see the little apostrophe? It's because it's supposed to be an ayin, not ayir. Yeah. It's hard for us to say that. Ma'avir. Okay? Ma'avir. And the opposite is mechabed. Now there is another melacha of Shabbat that we're going to speak about later, which has two components. We say hotza'ah. Okay, why am I even mentioning that? That's hotza'ah. That means right? Hotza'ah. But hotza'ah has two parts. There's a part B, or you could say an extension, which I'd say this is part A, and part B is called ma'avir. Hotza'ah means to take out from one domain to another domain. You're not allowed to take objects from the private domain to the public domain, and vice versa. The opposite of hotza'ah is, of course, hachnasa, and they're both considered one of the 39 categories of work. But an additional part of this prohibition is even within the public domain, you're not allowed to carry. That's why usually most people translate this whole malacha as carrying, because this means carrying, ma'avir, to transfer, ma'avir arba amot. You take any object from point A to a point B 4 amot away, that's about 2 meters away. That's a prohibition on Shabbat, to carry within the public domain. And that is, the word is ma'avir arba amot. This is ma'avir, to set on fire, to light, to kindle. They're very similar words, so that's why I want you to realize that these are two separate words. One has the ayin first, and one has the ayin afterwards, right? Ma'avir, the ayin comes after the bet, and here it's ma'avir, the ayin comes before the bet, and don't get confused with those two melachot of Shabbat. Hope that was a little
So
good.
Ma'aver is taking out.
It means to carry.
Okay.
It means to carry.
Carry.
Yeah. Literally, it might mean like to transfer. But what is transferring if not carrying something?
Lighting. This is a lighting.
This is lighting. This is the light to light a fire. Light. Fire. And this is to carry. Yeah. Mavir. We're learning about Mavir now, lighting a fire. Okay? It's pasuk in the Torah. B'yom HaShabbat lo teva'aru esh. Shemot 35, you see it on page 25, line 7 or 8. You shall kindle no fire. Lo teva'aru esh is the Hebrew for that. You shall kindle no fire throughout your settlements on Shabbat. So it's one of the 39 categories which is actually mentioned explicitly in the Torah. Most of the others, right, everything we spoke about, that boneh and soter, bakeh patish, mechatech, it's not written in the Torah explicitly. We learned it from the Mishkan, from the activities to build the Mishkan. But this one was particularly singled out. And there's a debate in the Talmud why it was singled out. Well, if all of the 39 categories are prohibited from the Torah, right, you could be obligated to bring an offering in the Beit HaMikdash for violating the Shabbat laws for any one of the 39 categories, for planting a seed, for plowing the field. Why does it mention specifically this one? Do not light a fire. Okay? So the sages have two answers. There's a machloket. Some say that it's giving us an example. To show you that each and every one of the 39 categories of work is its own type of work. In other words, let's say on the same Shabbat, you forgot that it was Shabbat and you went to plow the field. And then you wake up and you say, oh my gosh, what an idiot. It's Saturday. I shouldn't have been plowing the field. And so you go back home and then you say, okay, I'm gonna, and again, you're so forgetful. I can't remember what day it is. And you start, I'm going to write my book. Okay, so you start to write your book. And then you say, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. It's Shabbat today. So you did two prohibited categories of work. You plowed and you wrote. So the law is you have to bring two sacrifices for each particular type of work. That's why we have 39 categories. That is learned out according to Rabbi Natan. That's what learned out from the fact that the Torah singled out one of the melachot to tell you that each melacha on its own is a separate prohibition. Just like this one, lighting a fire is a prohibition, kindling is a prohibited melacha, and obviously you'll be punished for it separately. Then so too each one. There's another tradition too that Rabbi Lamed doesn't mention here. I think the other tradition says the reason why kindling a fire was singled out is because it's less severe than all the other prohibitions of Shabbat. All the other prohibitions of Shabbat, if you did them on purpose, you're punishable by death. If there's two witnesses, like what do we saw this story in the Torah about the Mekoshesh Eitzim, the fellow who was collecting, gathering wood, or cutting down wood on Shabbat, he was put to death. He was stoned by the community. It's fine. I'll manage. Thank you. All good. Enjoy your tea. It's fine. I'll manage. I'm used to drinking tea of all kinds. In any case, that shows you that the violating Shabbat is punishable by death if you do it intentionally. The one exception, which is not punishable by death, is maybe kindling a fire. Lelav yatzat. It was singled out to show that it's different from all the other categories of work in that you only get lashes. That's punishable by lashes. Obviously, we don't get lashes or death nowadays, but there's a debate exactly why this melacha was singled out. Bottom line is, it's prohibited from the Torah, whether you get lashes or whether you get put to death. You don't want to do that. You don't want to violate the Torah's prohibitions. So definitely kindling a fire is for sure prohibited. It's mentioned explicitly in the Torah. But it is an interesting history that this one shows you that each and every individual melacha is prohibited from the Torah. Okay, let's move on. There's actually a basic question here. It's interesting. If you turn the page to page 26, at the end of section 1, at first glance, there's a basic question. You want to read it for us, Yosef? Sorry. At first glance,
there is a basic question about the Malakah of Haba'ala. We have a ruling: all destructive acts are exempt by Torah law but liable rabbinically. Shabbat. Therefore, if one tore an item of clothing or broke a utensil, he is not obligated to bring a sin offering. To be sure, he transgresses rabbinically, but not by the Torah. In light of this, and given that burning an item generally ruins it, why is lighting fire on a Shabbat considered transgression of a Torah prohibition? The answer is that anytime the positive elements provided by the fire, heating or lighting one's home, outweigh the loss of the burned item, it is classified as a constructive rather than a constructive act.
Then a destructive act, yeah. So we learned that, right? There's 5 different ways that the melachet machshevet. There's 5 conditions for the melacha to be prohibited from the Torah, right? It has to be permanent, and it has to be for the intended purpose, right? One of those was it has to be constructive. Fire is destructive, is it not? Well, you're doing the lighting of the fire for a constructive purpose, so it is prohibited, and it's still considered to be constructive because usually you light a fire to cook something or to do something. There is one interesting exception. Many of you might be familiar with it. In the Ashkenazi rite, can I give everybody a siddur, please? Thank you. I want you to open up to, when we start Shabbat, there's a custom in the Ashkenazi shuls that in between Kabbalat Shabbat and Arvit, we say the chapter 2 of Shabbat, Masechet Shabbat. It starts with the words Bameh Madlikim. You can find it on page 409. And on page 409 in the Siddur, so we're going to learn a little Mishnah. And if you look at the last Mishnah on the page, Mishnah number 5, Mishnah Hey, it speaks about if someone extinguishes a lamp. Page 408 and 409, right? One who extinguishes a lamp because he is afraid of heathens, robbers, or depression, or to enable a sick person to sleep is not liable for violating the Shabbat. If he did it to spare the lamp or the oil or the wick, he is liable. Rabbi Yossi absolves him in all these cases except that of sparing the wick, because he thereby turns it into a charcoal. This is not about the melacha of mavi'ir. This is about the melacha of mechabeh. The opposite of mavi'ir is mechabeh, right? We said to extinguish. So this is talking about someone who extinguishes a lamp. Does he violate the Shabbat? So wait, we said that it has to be a constructive act. So fine, Rabbi Laban says when you light a fire, you're doing it for a purpose, to give you light, to give you heat, to boil something. So the constructive act, it's deemed constructive, even though the actual fuel gets burned up. What about, how do you find something constructive about extinguishing a fire? Extinguishing a fire, where's the construction? So some people say, if you're trying to save the wick, the first opinion was you're trying to save the oil. So you're saving your oil. That's constructive, right? If you're trying to save the lamp is being it's going to crack, and so by turning off the light in the lamp, right? We're talking about the container. The container is going to get cracked open if it gets too hot. So if you if you extinguish the fire, then you're essentially saving your pot. That's what the rabbis say. But see, we have something constructive, even though you're extinguishing a fire. Rabbi Yossi says no. The only thing that's going to be actually constructive is when you are trying to make charcoal, right? What's charcoal? How do you make charcoal for your barbecue? You burn some pieces of wood, and then you put it out. What's left? Charcoal. It's easily lit. It can continue to burn, even though the first stage of burning has already been done. So why do you extinguish? Because you want to make charcoal so that you can use it later on. So you're actually constructing something when you're doing the destructive act of extinguishing a fire. And so we see the similar problem. This is a very strange pair. Both Mechabe and Mavir are not naturally constructive acts in and of themselves. Lighting a fire, you're destroying the fuel, and extinguishing the fire, you're actually not building anything. You're stopping the fire from continuing. How is that constructive? So we have to find the way that it's constructive because of the principle that we have in all the rules of Shabbat, that you're only liable if you do them in a constructive way. And the Mishnah, some of you may recite it every Friday night and not really understand what you're talking about, but this is basically the same laws of Shabbat that we're learning here, that there has to be a constructive purpose for you to be chayav. And if you're just trying to let somebody sleep, you're turning off the lights, you're putting out the fire, the candle, because somebody needs to sleep, well, that's not a constructive purpose enough so that you're going to be liable. So you're patur. Patur in laws of Shabbat usually means you're not liable on the biblical level. And therefore you don't have to bring a korban offering, but it's still prohibited from the sages. Only if somebody's really sick can you really, deathly ill, can you extinguish the fire. But in any case, patur means that you're not liable on the biblical level because it's not constructive enough. It has to really be constructive. Having somebody else sleep, that's not really constructive in the action. That's sort of very far removed from your action itself. And though, sure, having a good night's sleep is a constructive activity, it's not enough connected to the actual act of extinguishing the lamp. In any case, that is this what we're talking about now in this chapter, the laws of kindling and extinguishing a fire. And it could be that in most instances, extinguishing a fire is only going to be rabbinic level, because there's a debate about how to get something constructive out of putting out a fire. So in many cases it will be only rabbinic, and therefore that gives us a little more leeway for putting out fires. But for kindling fires, everybody assumes that your lighting a fire is considered constructive because the positive elements, the heating, the lighting, outweigh the destructive element of burning the fire. And that's a direct result of the actual action of kindling the fire, is that you get the heat and the light, and so it's considered a constructive activity. Seder, let's see some of the laws of Hav'ara. You know what? Before we put away our Sidurim, let's take a break and pray.
I have a question.
Yeah?
What is the difference between Ma'avir and Hav'ara?
It's just the noun. Mavir is the verb form, and Hav'ara is the noun form.
So
It's the same word.
When we say this, Malaka is called Hav'ara or it's called Ma'avir?
Mavir. Both. It's called both. It's called both. You could say Hav'ara, it's a noun, and you could say Mavir if you want to speak about the action which is forbidden. But they're both. It's the same word. Yeah. Lighting a fire. Page I'm looking for Achenu. Kol Beit Yisrael. What did we say it is? Page 231. This time you'll sing with your mouth. 231 at the bottom. We'll pray for the hostages. We'll take a break. We should be praying every day, never forgetting our brethren who are in their siege, and who knows their whereabouts. So cruel, so anti-humanitarian. Anybody who tells you, oh, how can you be bombing Gaza and there's children there? First of all, children shouldn't be there. We told them this is a war zone. Second of all, we can't be held to humanitarian standards if they're not going to be fighting with humanitarian standards. They are holding hostages, little children, old people, anybody. You have to ensure their welfare, even according to the rules of war. So they haven't seen the Red Cross. They haven't. We don't know. We have no idea where they are, how they are. They could be dead for all we know. They could be in pain. They could be having medical conditions. So we know that some of them have medical conditions. They're elderly, and we just don't know. It's so inhumane. So this is you can't demand humanitarian standards against otherwise the forces of good will always lose. Right? If you don't put the same standards if you apply all the strictures only on the good guys, the bad guys are always going to win. So unfortunately, I mean, of course we are, and we're not carpet bombing, and we're still targeting the terrorists and telling all the civilians to leave, but there's going to be casualties, and I don't think any sane person, with a sense of morality, can say that this is immoral to attack and try to get back our hostages and try to defeat our enemies. So they openly declare, if we have the chance, we're going to do it again. So we tried putting them behind the fence. Didn't work. So apparently it was not good enough to put them behind the fence. And we're going to, therefore, have to destroy them, get rid of them from our neighborhood. We have to be the neighborhood bully. You know, there was a song by Bob Dylan called Neighborhood Bully. It's a wonderful song. It's written about Israel. 40 years ago, he came to Israel. You know, he's Jewish. He is Jewish. Bob Dylan's still alive. Famous singer, composer, folk singer. And he even won the Nobel Prize, believe it or not, for his poetry of his songs. So Neighborhood Bully is a song he wrote about Israel and how everybody accuses it of being a bully. But sometimes we have to be a bully to survive. That's what he describes in the song. You can find it online. So the lyrics should be taught. In any case, sorry?
Maybe we are too nice.
Maybe we are too nice. Maybe we're too nice. Yeah, it's hard for us to be cruel. And in the end, what does our sages teach us? That if you're cruel if you're kind when you should be cruel, essentially you end up being cruel to the kind. And yesterday I went to 2 funerals within 12 hours of young, beautiful, moral, sweet, and good people who gave their lives to fight these monsters. And so maybe we're being too nice, and we're sacrificing our children. We should be carpet bombing them and just let the Air Force destroy the whole thing before we even step foot in Gaza. We're being too nice, maybe, but I don't know. It's hard to know the details. I hope we're not being too nice. I hope we're doing everything necessary from an operational point of view. That's what the Army claims. That's what my brother was there. He was very close to the family yesterday, and he was there when the a high-up army officer came to speak to them about what exactly happened and how their son was killed and why. And my brother wasn't having none of it. He was not convinced, but he said, we need to have some of the buildings there for our operational purposes so that we can advance stage by stage. I don't know. I hope we're doing everything that we can to save the kind. We're not being cruel to ourselves while being kind to the cruel. So it's very, very tricky business, and maybe we're too nice. I think you have a good point. I just don't know. I don't know enough about what we're doing and what the attitude is. Clearly know that we were too nice in the last 10 years and more, 15 years since Hamas took over. We should have put an end to it 15 years ago, not every few years we go in again. Every few years we say, oh, we're going to we'll teach them a lesson. Apparently they're very slow at learning. Can we get one more Siddur? We're going to sing Achenu. And then Yaakov is here. Good morning. Are you ready to sing with me? Page 231. Achenu kol beit Yisrael. Achenu kol beit Yisrael. הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. Again from the top. אחינו כל בית ישראל. Last paragraph. אחינו כל בית ישראל הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. Stop for a second. Could you bring the speaker from behind you, please? And we'll play. I sent you a recording of this tune, which is it's instrumental, so we can sing along with it. I think that means it's connected. There we go. It's connected, and we'll play the link once we get the link on. Here we go. There it is. Yeah. This is the intro. Kol beit Yisrael. It wasn't an intro. Hanatunim b'tzara uveshivya, haomdim ben bayam ben bayabash. I think he's going to do it again from the top. Kol beit Yisrael. Kol beit Yisrael הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. המקום ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה ומאפלה לאורה ומשיבור last line now. Legeula hashagala uvizman kahariv. Again, hamakom. Hamakom yirachem. Maybe this is just an interlude. He's doing harmonies. Start from the top again. Kol bet Yisrael. No, he's doing the high part. Last line now. Okay, all right, we'll say prayer speedily and swiftly very soon. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Laws of Hava'ara. So we opened up the Siddur to show you the first section we studied about how it's constructed. We think about how it's constructed both for the kindling of the fire and the extinguishing of the fire. Let's see some of the laws now. Okay? Page 26. Okay, Stephen, you want to read for us section 2?
The law of Hava'ara. One who light a fire of any size that meets some needs violate a Torah prohibition. It makes no difference whether he starts the fire by rubbing stones together using a magnifying glass to focus the sun ray on straw, lighting a match, or turning on the electricity. It also does not matter if the fire is fueled by oil, kerosene, or electricity. Anytime one intends to start a fire and succeed in doing so, it transgresses a Torah prohibition. However, one who merely causes spark to be released does not violate Torah law. Furthermore, if the spark were released unintentionally, there is no prohibition at all. Therefore, one may wear woolen or synthetic clothes, even though sometimes sparks are released when putting them on or taking them off, since these sparks are released unintentionally and to no purpose, and there is no prohibition.
Okay, so if you're wondering about that, sometimes you have static electricity. Don't worry about it. You're not intending to make it happen. It's only a spark. It's not actually a fire. So then it's allowed. However, when you intend to do it, that's a problem. So, if you have a spark plug, and push a button and the spark plug, ignites a fire, that may be more problematic. Go ahead. Just that is prohibited.
Just as prohibited by Torah law to kindle a new fire is also prohibited by Torah law to increase a pre-existing flame. The law on Yom Tov is different. While one may not kindle a new fire, then either one may turn up an existing flame. On Shabbat, however, one may not even raise a flame. For example, one may not increase the flame on a gas burner by turning the knob controlling the gas flow. Likewise, one may not increase the flow of kerosene to a heater in order to raise the flame or add oil to a burning lamp on Shabbat.
Right. Remember, we talked about when we were talking about cooking. We said that of course, we don't want you to cook on Shabbat. And what are we afraid of? We said that you have to have a covered fire. Why? Because the fire, you don't leave things on an open fire on Shabbat, because if it's uncovered, the fire is uncovered, we're afraid you might... Bishul is cooking. So you're going to want to cook more. That's right. And that's one thing we're worried about, that you're going to cause it to cook on Shabbat. But how are you going to cause it to cook faster? We said you're going to stir the coals up. Stirring the coals so that the fire gets hotter. So there's two prohibitions you'd be doing. The prohibition of cooking and the prohibition of lighting the fire. Causing the fire to get stronger in itself is prohibited on Shabbat. Got it? So that's why we usually require both things. We require the food to be fully cooked before Shabbat, and it has to be put on a covered fire, just in case. The truth is that if you put it on from before Shabbat, as long as it's mostly cooked or partially cooked, you can leave it on an open fire because it's already edible. It's not fully cooked, but once it's already edible, the rabbis are less worried that you're going to stir up the coals to make it edible because it's already edible. You want to eat it, so you can eat it as is. But if something's raw, something's uncooked, you're not allowed to leave it on an open fire because an uncovered fire, because you might stir up the coals, and then you'd be violating two halachot. You'd be doing mavir and you'd be doing bishul, causing that meat to be cooked or that food to be cooked. Okay, so this is. This is a problem. That's also why we have to be very careful with candles, handling candles on Shabbat. We don't, basically. Why do we not handle a candle? Even if it's lit. So if you have an oil lamp, and here's the oil, and inside there's a wick, and it's lighting. So every time you jostle it a little bit, you bring the oil closer to the wick, and it causes the fire to be either brighter or to extinguish it, but you're playing with the fire. What did your mother not tell you? Don't play with fire. Don't play. It's dangerous. So don't play. So here on Shabbat, if you move even a wax candle, if you bump it, if you move it, you're causing it to either light more or to light less. You're bringing the fuel closer to the wick, and any adjustment that you make to this fire is a problem. It's a problem of hava'ara. Okay. Here he says on page 27, in the last paragraph, if the wax candle is on the table, if the oil lamp has a floating wick, he does not need to worry that the shaking the table will cause the flame to increase. Right. I guess the floating wick is always, it has the same amount of oil, whether it's to the right or to the left. But other types of oil lamps definitely cause problems. So, not so much so that the rabbis, nowadays we have electricity, so it's hard for us to imagine. But in the olden days, if you wanted to, what does it say? If you want your children to be very smart, if you want to make your children Torah scholars, what should you do? You should be very careful about lighting candles. That's what it says in the Talmud. And everybody says, you have to be so careful to light the Shabbat candles. To make sure you light the Shabbat candles, it's almost like it's magic. The Shabbat candles, it's so important. If you want to pray that your children be Torah scholars, like all good Jewish mothers want their children to be knowledgeable in Torah. So they're very careful about lighting Shabbat candles. I think originally, you know what it meant? It didn't mean lighting candles, Shabbat candles. It meant lighting candles. Now it gets dark at 5:30 in the afternoon. So if you don't light candles, you can't study. You can't learn anything past 5:30 in the afternoon. You have hours and hours of waking time where your kids will just be twiddling their thumbs. And so it's a good thing to invest your money. In the old days when you didn't have electric lights, you should invest in candles so that your children can study into the evening, and of course all night long as well. You're not working during the nighttime. That's the Rambam says that the person's majority of his Torah study happens at night. Because at night you're not busy with work, you're not busy going, and especially in the wintertime, you have more opportunity to study Torah because You have a longer night in the winter time. And so, anyways, candles are used for seeing, not just a symbolic Friday night, one for Zachor, one for Shamor, we learn the laws. But candles were used as implements for reading. Now here the rabbis were afraid, and they said, you're not allowed to read by the light of a flame on Shabbat. Why? Many times, I mean, our candles maybe are much more developed. That we developed the art, but an oil lamp, you got to play with it sometimes. Fix the wick, you move it to the right, move it to the left. You want a little bit more light, so you tilt. Right? What a candle in the old days was a receptacle with oil and the wick, on the side of it, or there may be a little mouthpiece for the wick. You've seen this, lanterns. Like the genie that comes out of the lantern, you know what I'm talking about? Talmudic lantern, exactly. Those you had to play with. You, if you needed more light, you tilt it a little bit. So the rabbi said, we don't want you reading by the candlelight on Shabbat because you might tilt it. If you tilt it, you're violating the Torah law of Havara. I'll just read it. I'll take your question in a second. The sages ordained, look at page 27, section 3. The sages ordained that one may not read by the light of an oil lamp on Shabbat, lest the flame become dim and the reader absent-mindedly tip the lamp, so that more oil reaches the wick, thus transgressing the Torah prohibition of Havara. Sure, the sages ordained the kindling of Shabbat lamps, but this is a different purpose. Shabbat candles are meant to provide light for the meal, right, for the whole room, not for careful examination of texts. To allow one to walk around in his home without bumping into furniture. In contrast, the sages forbade doing things that require careful examination by lamplight, out of concern that in such a case, one might end up tipping the lamp in order to see better. What's the solution? The Talmud already says, well, we want people to study Torah. Shabbat is for studying Torah. Now you're finished your meal, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. We're just going to sleep for 12 hours? You should use the Shabbat for more than just sleep. You should learn for studying Torah, but you're not allowed to. Well, nowadays we have electricity, so that's good. We'll speak in a minute whether there's any worry about electricity, about playing with the lights. Usually not. But what if you only had an oil lamp? So there's a solution they suggested. The rabbi suggested that if you learn b'chavruta, you're okay, because you'll remind each other. Now you don't have to worry. If you're with your friend, then you can look out. And but by yourself, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. On the next page, page 28 at the top, he speaks about electric light is of course allowed, but what about if you have a dimmer switch? You know what a dimmer is? You can make even electric lights stronger or weaker. Say it in Chinese, Israel understands what. So he says here that since the dim, it's called in English. So usually we don't play with the dimmer switch. Usually we have enough light and we don't play with it, and so it's not really technically prohibited. But he says it's advisable to cover that dimmer knob. Cover it, put a piece of paper on it. It says Shabbat. To remind you that if your hand goes there naturally, because you should remind yourself. To such an extent, you can buy in the stores a kit of prepared plastic covers. They're like pieces of plastic about so big, and it says on them Shabbat, and they have a little Velcro on the back, so that you can stick them on top of your switches. So that, because sometimes we're forgetful. We walk into the room, we turn on the light. Walk in the room, turn off the light. Without thinking, oh, it's Shabbat. So if you have a reminder, that would stop you from doing that. It's based on this law, but it's not obligated. You don't have to have those. You should just remember. The sages made their enactment only about an oil lamp where there's really worry that they might be adjusted. So now I'll take a question, Yaakov. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, so basically, if you like studying with someone, not by yourself, then you're allowed to read in the candle's light.
Correct.
That's nice.
That is nice. Yeah. Yeah, but listen, we shouldn't. Listen, if the Hezbollah decides to attack us from the north, why are we so scared about it?
You mean 300,000 soldiers on the border?
Yeah, why are we so scared about the Hezbollah? We even have the American with 2 aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean, with the president of the United States telling them, don't, over and over again, don't enter the war. Because first of all, of course, we want to take care of one enemy at a time. We have the ability. The chief of staff the other day, he said we're not using even less than 50% of our capacity of the Air Force, and the IDF is very strong. If we have to, we'll fight on both fronts. But the front in the north, the danger is that, Hamas is nothing. Our soldiers are being killed to take care of. It's a tiny terror organization which took over the Gaza Strip, but Hezbollah is like 10 times the size. If Hamas can send 1,000 rockets a day at us, Hezbollah can send 5,000 rockets a day at us. And more importantly, what Hezbollah apparently has the ability to do is to send directed pinpoint missiles, meaning that unless now we have a missile defense system, but if the missile defense system is not 100% clear, they can take out the electric power plants in the first 5 minutes of the war, and we'll all be sitting in the dark for months. They have the missiles that cover the entire Israel. They know exactly where the power plants are. They know where the electric company is and where the electric, and this is a serious danger. Now, of course, we know about this danger and we're doing everything we can to protect about it. And if it happens, we'll see if we're successful. But it's a risk. It was when they're telling people to get ready. It was by accident they gave out this order. I don't know if you guys were aware of it, but apparently the order, there was a directive by the Home Command. They said to everybody, get stock up to be in your safe rooms for 72 hours with flashlights, and because it could be that we won't have electricity. That's why people have battery operated radios. It's a very dangerous affair to take on the Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon. We're going to have to do it at some point. We have to. This is ridiculous. We can't live like this. But that's the danger. So we're talking about living by candlelight. It's like the Middle Ages. We think, how crazy is this? It could be. We're going to have a Shabbat without electricity. It happens because our infrastructure is not so good, and when there's a heavy rainfall, sometimes we have power outages, even in Jerusalem, and for sure in Tekoa, where I live, we always have power outages. So I have many, emergency lamps. They're called, with the battery in them. It's part of a life, but in this war, this will be a big part of it. If they manage to take out our power plants, we won't have lights, we won't have communications, we won't have internet. Forget about lights, we won't have internet. What are we going to do without Netflix? Oh my gosh. What are we going to do without Facebook? Can you imagine? Now that is going to get everybody angry. Sending us missiles, oi. But so anyways, so we have to learn how to deal with candlelight. Now we're learning the halachot about candlelight, not only because it's giving us the basics of the prohibition, but it actually still is true. Yes, and now I'll take questions, please. Yes.
We in the Mushav, we bought power bank.
Good idea.
Every family is supposed to have a power bank.
That's why. No, probably larger for the house. I don't know, maybe for whatever the most basic needs are, a refrigerator. I don't know. But people you can hook up a car battery. There's all sorts of ways to make having power. Listen, I stocked up my safe room. I have a shelter in the house, and I put some food there, and put some water there, and I put a bucket there. Because after a month ago, after the horrors of people being locked in their rooms for 72 hours until the police could get them out, it's horrible. And of course, they had no power. Also, the terrorists took out the electricity there. One of the first things they did. We shouldn't have that closer to home, but better to be prepared. That's our job to help. And I spoke to the head of security in Tekoa, and I told him I don't have a gun. Now I do, Baruch Hashem. But then I didn't have a gun. And so what do I do? Like what's our role? What's we're supposed to do, civilians? And he said, your role is to go into your safe room and don't come out until we tell you. Because that way we can roam around the yeshuv and know that anybody who's not a terrorist is not going to be there. He's either one of us or one of them, and we can identify. If we've got civilians wandering around in between the houses, watering their lawn or looking out the windows to look for the missiles in the air, then we're going to have a harder time protecting. So the job of the civilians is to go to the shelter and stay there until the authorities can take care of the battle, whatever fighting has to happen. So hopefully nothing of this will happen. I don't want to scare anybody, and hopefully we're winning in Gaza and we're making progress. The city of Gaza is surrounded. Gaza's been split into two already. There's northern Gaza and southern Gaza, and so we've made a lot of progress, but it's not over.
Do you know how to use the gun?
Do I know how to use a gun? Yes.
Did you practice?
Yes. You can't get a license unless you do a course and you practice. And Baruch Hashem, things were really quick. I think I put in, my forms that I filled out to get permission a couple weeks ago, like I guess 3 weeks ago. And then I got a call and I had a personal phone interview about a week ago. And then I took the first appointment I could get to do the course. Did the course on Friday. Didn't want to take off class for it. It's 4.5 hours. I had to take off a lot of time. I actually had an appointment to do it today, but I got an earlier appointment on Friday morning. That was better for me. I did it Friday morning, and on Sunday, I got an email that I can come and pick up my gun. It was approved. So very quick, very quick. Government's doing very well in this regard, and the more people have guns, the more protected we are. B'ezrat Hashem. We should only use it for good things and only in the good way. And okay? Back to the laws of Shabbat. There's a problem sometimes. I don't know if you saw this on Shabbat when you were in our house. Hopefully, if you haven't been to our house, you will be at our house sometime. Is that we light the candles in our dining room. And right near the dining room, we have these sliding doors where there's a lot of breeze. That's where we get the breeze. It's very nice in the summertime. But the problem is the breeze could extinguish the candles. So are you allowed, let's say it's hot, it's summertime, and you want to get some air, get some breeze. So you open up the window, but then the wind comes in and blows out your candles. So you're extinguishing the flame on Shabbat. As we said, that's one of the 39 categories of work, right? Mav'ir and mechabe, extinguishing. You're not allowed to put it out. So fine, maybe it's not biblically prohibited because it's not for a constructive purpose, right? We talked about that. In most cases, mechabe is not, Here you're. So you could say you're not doing it on purpose. What did we learn about things that you not doing purposefully? You're not liable, right? It's not considered a biblical violation if it's not purposefully done. The one exception we said is, can you cut off a chicken's head and not have it die? If it's an inevitable consequence, then even if you don't intend it to happen, if it's for sure going to happen, you have to, it's considered like it's intentional. So if it's a very, very windy day, and I open up the window because I need some air, you can't play dumb. I know for sure that window is so close to my candles that they're going to blow out. So you're not allowed to open the window. On another day, when it's not so windy, and it may blow it out, it may not blow it out, so then it's allowed. Because it's an unintended consequence, which is not inevitable, that's allowed. Yes?
First of all, you're allowed to surround candles with some object to shield them from the wind.
Yes.
If you want to win, then
Yes.
you want to have.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah. I do that, by the way. I do
also
that.
regarding the chicken without head, there was a case once some chicken lived for 1 year without head, and
Wow.
people made a huge show of it.
Yeah.
But eventually the chicken died.
Well, we all die, but I highly doubt that story. I don't believe it.
It's very much real.
It's actually a chicken who accidentally chopped his front face.
Part of
it.
Part of the head.
No,
But
no,
not,
part.
you can't cut the chicken's neck,
Yes.
and you can't live for a year. It's impossible.
It was neck.
It's
He
impossible.
was feeding her.
Okay.
The chicken.
There are a lot of stories, but I don't believe it. Now listen, I had once students came to me and said they saw a chicken that had 3 legs.
Possible. Why not?
It is possible. It's just like there's some humans born with an
Actually,
extra
not
limb. There's all sorts of deformities. But the deformity of having your head cut off, that I don't think is real. I don't think that's
I'm not really
possible.
surprised by this story, actually. I mean,
Okay.
it sounds normal.
Okay. Everybody, whatever's normal for you. I'm not going to argue with that. So anyways, the same thing with opening a door and having the fire go out. If you have a fireplace, you got to be careful about it. We actually spoke about it a little bit. We talked about the ovens, right? We talked about cooking in an oven. And we said there's... you can leave the food in, for example, that's cooked before Shabbat, and let the oven stay on, and it's heating it up, it's keeping it warm for you. The only problem is when you open up the door of the oven, there's a thermostat. This thermostat, right? You're letting in cold air, and that's going to be causing the oven element to be turned on again because the thermostat wants to retain it at the requisite heat. So it's a similar concept of you're doing an action. If it's inevitably going to happen, for sure going to happen, then it's a problem. You have to be careful about that too. So if the candles are far away from the window, the way the breeze is going to come into the whole house, the candle's just going to flicker a little. There's room to be lenient, as long as it won't blow it out. That's what Rabbi Menachem says in the next section. Okay, next. We're going to skip ahead to fires that actually cause property damage. On page 30, that's section 6. Page 30, everybody see where I am? Fire that causes property damage. What do you do? So, Hananel, how are you this morning? Okay? You're a little tired? Yeah.
I had a rough discussion because of the late.
You had a chavruta with him. Okay. That's why you were late. You're blaming the rabbi. Interesting. Okay.
Everything is Rabbi's fault.
It's not a question of blame, really. I just want to know that you're feeling okay. All right? And could you read for us, please? Section 6? Thank you.
If a fire breaks out on Shabbat, the first question that must be addressed is whether it's present a danger to the human life. If it does, there is a mitzvah to do whatever is necessary to
Extinguish.
Yeah. However, if it is clear that there is no danger to human life, then even if the fire may cause extensive property damage,
Is the case. As is the case. As is the case. Go ahead. You're doing fine. When?
When an entire house goes up in the flame, one may not put it out because monetary laws does not override Shabbat.
So imagine this. in most cases, first of all, the first line was the most important. If there's a danger to life, of course you put out the fire. Very quickly, as soon as possible, best way possible. But imagine a circumstance where there's no danger to life. The truth is, in the modern cities that we live in, there usually is a danger to life because we have electricity in the walls, and the fire could get to that, and it could cause it to spread. And maybe we have gas balloons in some homes. And even if we say, okay, I don't care, my house will burn up in flames, the neighbor, maybe it'll
kill me.
because it might go to his house. The fire travels, right? So the fire could transfer to that, and then that house, maybe there's an old lady in a wheelchair or sleeping, and they won't be able to get out in time. And we're all connected, and we live very close to each other. In the modern context, and especially if there's a gas balloon which is going to explode, there could be a child playing in the yard. Who knows? You don't know where everybody is. We have to be very careful. If there's a fire, it's usually dangerous to life. And if there's danger to life, of course you put it out. But let's just think of an example where you could have a fire and you are 100% sure there's no danger to life. You live on a desert island, okay? You're the only one on the island, okay? And you built yourself a nice little hut with all your comforts, and you put all your food in there and all your belongings, and by accident you lit a bonfire and it get onto the house. You're the only one in the island, and you're outside, you're nowhere near the house. You have to sit there on Shabbat, sing Shabbat Zmirot, and watch your house and all your possessions go up in smoke. I was assuming you can get food elsewhere. It's not. You're not going to starve to death. But yes, that is the mitzvah. We care about Shabbat and not violating Shabbat so much, even if it costs you a pretty penny. People convert. I saw some discussion. I'm on some Facebook groups. They say, how much I want to convert. How much is it going to cost me? And they start thinking about the cost. Okay, you have to have books, and you have to, eat kosher food. It's much more expensive. Sometimes you have to travel. You have to move to live in a Jewish community. People are, they say, well, and then there's, the Pesach is going to cost you more because you got to turn over the whole kitchen and buy new dishes, and then you have to have separate dishes for meat. They rack up all the costs, and it could be pretty expensive. So you got to know what you're getting into. But they don't. I've never heard or seen anybody say this. Do you know that if there's no danger to life, and there's a fire in your house, and all your most valuable possessions are going up in smoke, you're not allowed to violate the Shabbat, even if it costs you the shirt off your back, everything you own. When you become a Jew, you have to be dedicated to the Torah, dedicated to keeping halakha, no matter what the cost is. That's make you think twice, right? You really have to believe in this stuff and be dedicated to it, even if it costs you. You're going to have to start over from scratch. Of course, that's hard for us to think of, and we've gotten used to the concept that if you're a Jew, you may be killed by anti-Semites. And if you live in it, you might have to be called to go to war and give your life in battle. And so, yes, there are costs of being a Jew and dangers of being a Jew. But usually we think of, how often is that going to happen? Well, I have to give up my life. And Baruch Hashem, doesn't happen so often that you have to give up your money either. It does, perhaps hurt the pocketbook on a more regular basis. The kosher food every week, you're going to spend more on your food. Here in Israel, much less so, but still, because of the kashrut laws, you could say the prices are higher. You could say that, although there's many, many considerations that go into the price of food, transportation, all sorts of different things. But to think to the extreme, the halacha is very extreme. Even when you think about it, it's even more extreme, because what did we say? Is it a biblical prohibition to put out a fire? In most cases, it's not, because you're not doing it for a constructive purpose. If you're intending to make calls, or if you're intending to save the vessel so that it shouldn't break, so then it's an intended, there's a constructive purpose. But in most cases, it's destructive, and if that's the case, it's only a rabbinic prohibition to extinguish a fire. You have to give up all the money in the world not to violate the rabbi's laws. In many cases, it is a biblical prohibition as well, because we said, like, to save your vessels. That's considered to be constructive. In any case, the most important law is that if there is danger to life, and 9 times out of 10 there is danger to life, you can't put out the fire if it's not danger to life. And we're going to see that sometimes it's a very small fire. I'll give you an example. I'll take your question in a second. Sometimes you have candles on the table. The candle gets knocked over. Somebody's reaching for something. Uh-oh. There's a tablecloth. It's a wood table. It could catch on fire, but we don't. If it's not covered with oil, it'll take a while. It's not going to immediately. The whole house is going to go on fire. Right? If my mother has in her house, and I have in my house also, a fire alarm. Right? It smells the smoke. It could be a fire for like 5 minutes. It doesn't go off because it's a very tiny little small fire. Okay, so what do? There's no danger to life at this point, so you can't extinguish it. What you can do is arrange a situation so that the fire gets put out indirectly, not by you standing there with a water hose or pouring water on it, or pouring a fire extinguisher with some foam. Not doing it directly. But if you do it indirectly, the classic example in the Talmud is, if you see that there's a fire, let's say some kind of a cabinet that's on fire, surround the cabinet with jugs. In those days they had clay jugs. That's what they used to keep things in. And fill them with water, the clay jugs, and put them next to the fire. Now we all know that the heat is going to make the jugs break. And the jugs are going to break, and all the water will spill out of them, and that will extinguish the fire. So you cause a situation where you have, that's called in halacha grama. Grama is indirect action. It's not direct, but it's indirect action. So that's what you can do in some cases. If you're not worried about the fire spreading, that's what you should try to arrange, some kind of a grama. You do it not in the normal way, and of course there's always an option if you know a non-Jew. If you have a neighbor who's not Jewish, or a foreign worker, or even in Israel, there's always some non-Jews around, then you can tell him that I have a fire. Maybe you can help me. You could even tell if there's great loss, you could even tell him to do it. But usually you can hint to him, and you can do it indirectly. You pour water around, not on the fire, but you pour water around where the fire is, and then when the fire tries to spread, it'll get extinguished. That part that's on fire, you can't really extinguish it, but at least it won't ruin the rest of your house. Okay, now I'll take questions. Yeah, Yaakov. Comment.
Regarding the gas balloon.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yeah.
My father told me there was a case once somebody was just standing on the bus stop, and then he's sees the noise, and then he sees the gas balloon flying very closely nearby him, shh.
Wow. Yeah, it's dangerous stuff. This gas balloons. Luckily, we have some rules about it. There's very strict rules about the way they're stored, the way they're built.
Yeah,
they're built, but the accidents happen.
Also about foreign workers. I heard the story about the Shabbos Goy T-shirt. Basically, somebody had a huge writing on his T-shirt saying Shabbos Goy, and he was walking around on Shabbos. And all the Jews have been very best friends of him because they all needed him.
Sure. Yeah, there are many. There are hotels. There are communities that actually hire somebody. They pay him to be around. He's the designated Shabbos goy. In case there's a need, which is not important enough to have a Jew violate the Shabbat, but it is important enough that the rabbis can be flexible with the rabbinic prohibition of telling a non-Jew to do work for you. So that's what they have, these designated drivers. You have that, somebody who's not Jewish, so he can help you out in times of need. Yeah, some places they have a car with this guy has lights on top that says Shabbos Goy. But there's different communities, yeah.
Rabbi,
Yes.
The say it save the life, the break the heart, the fire also.
Also.
But how to save? We need to eat or
Look at page 33. Look at page 33. In any situation where human life might be endangered, it is a mitzvah for anyone who put it out to do so as soon as possible, since danger to human life overrides Shabbat. Even if the danger is uncertain, it's still a mitzvah to put out the fire. Right? For example, in a large building, you think everybody got out, but maybe there's somebody hiding somewhere, somebody was sleeping and they didn't know, and any chance of loss of life, next paragraph, you have to put it out. Everything necessary must be done as efficiently as possible. If you can rescue people, you do that. If you call the fire department, of course, they're going to come. They're going to drive their cars over to come and make sure that they can put out the fire. Don't ask a rabbi. Do whatever is the quickest thing to do. Okay? Good morning, good morning.
morning.
Wow, it's just a short amount of time, but fine, we'll stop here and we'll finish the laws of Mavir and Mechabed tomorrow, and you'll get a little bit of a